Round 9 of the Masters Tour in Las Vegas is getting underway. We're live from the Link Hotel. I'm That's Admiral, and I'm joined by the Admiral, TJ Sanders.
No.
TJ, how you doing today, bud?
Doing great, man, and looking forward to catching the series. Also looking forward to you hosting me for the first time in forever.
This is weird.
It is weird. It's weird having the microphone on this side of my head.
I know. It's weird having you on this side of my head.
It feels like I have to think with this side of my brain, which just doesn't make sense.
I feel like I have to think with either side of my brain, which doesn't make sense. Round number 9 is about to get underway. You saw some of the undefeated players in the graphic there. 2 left, Dog and Hypno, at the 8-0 mark right now. But a stacked top 16 right now that we have. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names, but I'm seeing some new names climb up in here as well. Some players that I've just seen on tournament circuits be in the top of the standings at times. But a couple unfamiliar ones here, and we're going to be taking a look at one with kamaretai, who's sitting at 6-2 right now.
Yeah, kamaretai is going to be going up against lnguagehackr, who's also, well, I believe at 6-2 at the moment. Let me take a look. Looks like it, but in the lower portion of the standings because of tiebreakers. But I think the big story has to be Dog and his mage decks. I love the direction that he's gone with his decks, and was talking to him a little bit while you and Derek were casting that matchup. And it was kind of interesting to hear his thoughts. He was like, I just wanted to be as greedy as possible. He says, I don't think my decks are good. He says, I think my techs are terrible. His techs for his decks are terrible. He said the idea is there, but it could be a lot better. Well, hard to get much better than 8-0.
Well, you could be 9-0. But it takes this round to do that.
It takes this round to do that.
And so far, from the sample size we have, he's going to be undefeated. But that's the same for Hypno as well.
Oh, no.
Some trends are breaking.
Yeah.
If that's the case. kamaretai versus lnguagehackr, again, it's what we're going to be taking a look at here. So we're going to go into deck lists at this point. And kamaretai, we've seen him on stream a couple times. And something that I've really noticed about his play in general is that he just seems to focus almost entirely on defense for a very large portion of the game. Yeah,
it's kind of an interesting play style. And also he has an interesting lineup. The fact that he has double water elemental and double power of creation in his primary deck for a cyclone mage deck is not something we have seen very often or at all. He also has a couple of magic dart frogs in his primary list. So it feels like this list is trying to fight for board early and then solidifying that board position later in the game with power creation. It seems like it works well on paper. Yesterday we saw him on stream against Dog, and it couldn't stand up to Dog's very greedy deck. And that brings us to our next point, which is lnguagehackr's deck. He's bringing a very similar deck. This is a more traditional freeze mage.
Oh, I got a story coming. Continue your point.
Than what we see from Dog, because it does have the burn with fireballs.
Yeah, it's more akin to what I've seen a lot on APX Void stream. He's a fantastic mage player who really plays mage pretty exclusively, and a lot of players look to him in order to devise new strategies or perhaps devise specifically one strategy for a tournament in that regard. He's been playing a lot of freeze mage. And
Freege Mage.
Freege Mage. The first time I ever cast with TJ was an online cast. And I'll never forget it because I had just met him, and he just could not stop saying Freege Mage. And it bothered the heck out of me. I couldn't get past it. And then I remember about halfway through the tournament, I had to start saying it. And I kept saying Freege Mage. And I was like, why is this so difficult? I can't help but say Freege Mage sometimes. It just kept happening. From that point forward, that's when I knew.
That's what we knew. Fast forward 3 years, we have like thousands of hours of cast together. And I still call it Freege Mage from time to time.
kamaretai versus lnguagehackr is now underway. And I want to talk about the deck from kamaretai too, because I do like the take on it. When you have magic dart frogs, it often incentivizes you to spend your resources quite aggressively to clear out board positions. If that's going to be the case, Twilight Drake gets a lot weaker if you want a 4-drop in there. Yep. So Water Elemental slots in. Water Elemental has the added benefit of coupling with Elemental Invocation sometimes. You can sometimes, Evocation. I keep calling it Invocation. Evocation. It's like Freege Mage. Sometimes you can play Water Elemental on turn 1 if the matchup calls for it. The other thing there is when you use all that gas and you run out of stuff and you're looking at clearing boards instead, what that means is Sea Giant is a little bit weaker because you've been putting so much stock into clearing out minions. So power creation is both a card advantage mechanism and a big load onto the board because your intent is to scale to the late game if you don't have early super big power plays.
Yeah, and one of the benefits that water elemental does have is that you can use it to trade over early game, and against faster decks, you can actually Conjurer's Calling the water elemental, and it's not bad. You get 4 drops, which are pretty good currently, and you can snowball board states from that position. I mean, let's say you get out a water elemental on turn 2, you trade it over, let's say, an Underbelly Angler, then you Conjurer's Calling. That's a very good early board. GG.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I think aggressive decks struggle with is a strong 4-drop into a value trade into Conjurer's Calling. It actually was a linchpin of the Summoner Mage decks we saw at the World Championships, where players, had 8 days to prepare 4 decks for the highest stakes event of the year. And Hench Clan Sneak, Conjurer's Calling, was a tech that Hunter Race brought to the World Championship and helped pilot to a first place finish for the year.
Number 1. Top 1,
Hench
as
Clan
the
Sneak.
Europeans call it.
Pavel was the first player I heard say top 1. Pavel, former world champion. It's technically correct. It just kind of sounds like you're bragging more.
Yeah, I was top 1.
I'm like, well, yeah, that's sort of the nature of being first place.
Yeah. lnguagehackr looked kind of confused. Maybe not confused, but was kind of baffled by kamaretai hovering over a 2-cost card that he drew to play, and you can see him mouthing. I think he mouthed Sorcerer's Apprentice or Apprentice. So lnguagehackr is one of the chillest dudes ever. Like, even under immense pressure, he just always looks so calm. And it's not that he's just calm. He just hides it really well, I guess. There was kind of a popular clip that we ran during the World Championship, which lnguagehackr competed at not too long ago, where lnguagehackr on stage after he won the championship event that qualified him to the World Championship was composed, calm on stage, very composed in his interview, and then he got off stage and just kind of laid on the floor and took it all in for a moment. And that was very out of character from what I had come to expect from lnguagehackr, and it was kind of cool to see emotions starting to flood through him.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, I'm good.
That event stands out to me. I'm going to talk about this turn real quick and then touch on a story about lnguagehackr there. He does need to take care of this board position. I think this is a pretty clear turn that you want to either Frostbolt or Ray of Frost and Doomsayer. Doomsayer, I think, is a very key minion in this spot. And honestly, he may be considering a double Doomsayer in this position because the freezes are probably better later on, and the double Doomsayer there. So that's, I think, what he's looking at is how to handle this board position best. I remember the championship that lnguagehackr won. All the players are sitting in the lobby, and lnguagehackr, I come to him, they're talking about their games and things that went wrong, and he was talking about trouble focusing in that spot. And I go, I actually have a lot of trouble focusing when I'm in competition too. Like, I haven't been to a big championship and had that much on the line playing Hearthstone. But, oh my, it's a plot twist. And I look at him and I go, every time I get clouded images in those situations, I don't know what to do. I always picture myself looking over my friend's shoulder playing Hearthstone, and they're kind of seeking my counsel, and I always tell myself, what would I tell my stupid idiot friend to do in this situation? And his eyes just open, and he's like, I've never thought about it that way before. The very next day, he's in a position where he absolutely knows he has to go for a 25% chance. He knows that everything else looks like it has a chance, but it's just going to fail. And he shrugs it off, and he kind of does a side-to-side head movement. He's like, yeah, all right. And he just slams the shutter walk, and then afterwards comes to me, and he goes, I looked at that board and I asked myself, what would I tell my stupid idiot friend to do? He's like, take a 25% chance.
Yeah, detach yourself from the game. Detach yourself from the stakes. That's good advice.
Tough thing to
do. Admirable taught lnguagehackr everything he knows.
I also used to call him lnguagehackr. I thought that was an I at the front of his name.
That's his fault.
He didn't correct me for like a year and a half.
That's a capital I. Prove me wrong.
He's just too nice. I met him when he got his start in the Tespa Collegiate Series.
Yep.
And holding on to the double Doomsayer actually gets a way to play around the Lore Walker Cho in this spot. Cho is a funny card because one of there's a Grandmaster of Americas. His name's Purple. He's been a professional player for many years. He loves locking down players into situations where they're actually just helpless. And so he's built lots of weird decks, like filling up your opponent's board with treasures from Marin the Fox, from putting so many bananas in your hand that you don't have time to cast your bananas and then draw cards for your turn. He locks you in a position where you had a dead turn and then keeps you there for a long time. He showed me a Lore Walker Cho mage a couple weeks ago, and he's just queuing it in top 100 legend, and he was legitimately locking people out of the game with bananas. He's throwing bananas on a Cho, putting bananas in their hand, and then if they cast their bananas, he loads more bananas onto the Cho, and it just keeps getting bigger the whole game. If they can't kill the Cho, they end up actually getting locked out of the game, and I was like, Purple, this is weird.
It's Purple in a nutshell.
Cho creates a strange dynamic in mage situations like this.
Yeah, and kamaretai gonna just unleash the Book of Specters here, which leads me to believe, wow. So that is a 2 mana, discard 3 spells from your deck.
I mean, he's digging specifically for key minions at this point. That's the one thing that's really missing from his hand.
Yeah, but Frost Nova gone is a pretty big deal.
lnguagehackr gets a clean Mountain Giant turn here.
Yeah.
He's weighing the odds of drawing multiple minions to make Mountain Giant playable while cycling in the Book of Specters. I don't think that's the kind of play lnguagehackr is looking for right now.
Yeah, he would have to draw 2 minions to be able to play the Mountain Giant this turn. He plays Book of Specters, Mountain Giant goes up to 6 cost. He'd have to have 2 additional cards in hand. So, I mean, this deck does have a decent amount of minions. At the top end, it's got double Mountain Giant, it's got Calic Ghost, Alexstrasza, Geppetto Joybuzz, double Astromancer, Archmage Antonidas.
Even at the bottom end, 2 Acolyte of Pain, 2 Novice Engineer.
Yeah, it's relatively minion heavy, and a lot of players.
Is it worth the risk?
I guess not. And there are a lot of key minions that are still left. There's still Ziliax, which he's pretty low life total. I can imagine Ziliax is on his mind. He also doesn't want to discard some key spells. Like Conjurer's Calling is a big one. Let's say he plays Book of Specters. Even if he gets two minions but discards Conjurer's Calling, he'd rather just have drawn that off the top to play with the Mountain Giant.
kamaretai leads off with Frog and Nova. I imagine he's got some Ray of Frost in mind. That's 6 damage, so he would have to weave in another spell in that instance. And that spell is the coin. And that coin is costly because I'm looking at power creation in hand.
Yeah, but Mountain Giant is a little bit too threatening to leave on board. It would be pretty much a guaranteed clear. The Cinderstorm would have to go all face.
It has to go
well,
4 face. 4 face leaves us alive, so that's not happening.
It is a lot of resources, though. And as you said, the coin is one of the biggest ones. But I think kamaretai realizes that he's kind of got lnguagehackr on the ropes. All this minion damage from the early game starting to add up.
The thing I'm looking at is kamaretai needs pressure next turn, or lnguagehackr I think can snowball. He's got Geppetto Joybuzz lined up on his turn 8, which is right before power creation, which means that lnguagehackr's got 2 chances at finding Kaligos or at finding Archmage Antonidas to try and punish the turn that kamaretai is looking forward to. Oh. Whew. Look at what your opponent just spent to deal with the Mountain Giant. lnguagehackr, he uses that information to make the read here. kamaretai is going to struggle dealing with this Mountain Giant.
Oh, but double Ray of Frost picked up again.
So that's 2 damage, plus the 2 from the Frog. That's 4. That doesn't take care of this.
Plus, he could Blast Wave. That would deal an additional 3 to the Mountain Giant. That's not enough. Then he would have to trade in the Frog.
Yeah. I mean,
so using double Ray of Frost, Blast Wave for no value, and then a trade-in Frog, that's the only way he has to deal with this.
And then you're leading initiative into lnguagehackr, where you look at the 8-mana slot. Antonidas is there. 2 Astromancers are there. Geppetto Joybuzz is there. There is major punishes if you just use all your resources, and then your opponent gets initiative and just develops back.
Yeah, I honestly think he has to go for Khadgar Conjurer's Calling and just hope that he gets
a bunch of more Magic Dart Frogs.
A bunch more Magic Dart Frogs, or a bunch of Millhouse Mana Storms.
Or a bunch of Loot Hoarders.
I mean, he pushes 1 here. It's starting to get to the point where it's low.
It's just the damage reach. Low. The damage reach is limited almost solely to power creation for kamaretai. There's no Archmage Antonidas in the deck.
Looks like he's just gonna.
Wow, he is.
Whoa.
He's taking out the Giant, and I don't blame him for this. Conjurer's Calling is extremely scary in this spot. The thing about it, though, is that lnguagehackr has such an easy way to keep that pressure high.
Yep.
And so for kamaretai there, with this hand, I'm seeking desperation. I think the Conjurer's Calling is superior because I think the way he's going to win this game is literally power creation and find a charge.
Yeah, it's still going to be tough. Now, one thing for lnguagehackr here is he's played both Mountain Giants, so there's no potential for a free minion for him here.
Hand is full, too.
Yeah, hand is full, so he's going to discard a card, but I think he just wants the minion pressure. Damage Stegatron!
That's the third time kamaretai has done that. That's the third time I've seen on broadcast him get damaged Stegatron from power creation.
Wow.
The jump, if you look at data aggregate sites, the jump on power creation when you hit damage Stegatron is massive compared to number 2. But lnguagehackr with a 1 mana Kaligos is actually increasing mana output this turn.
Yeah, and he can free Blizzard here and snap freeze to remove one of these Stegatrons, freeze the other, and have minion development to play whatever else he wants.
He's got some strong turns in front of him. If kamaretai honestly is going to win this game, he still needs help on the back of this, but he's in a position where that's much more likely.
Yeah.
I hope you like my invention.
So for lnguagehackr, he's going to keep drawing. I think kamaretai has a limited available read on lnguagehackr's hand, and so in this spot, I assume he's going to be using resources from the left to keep that hand read mitigated as long as possible on kamaretai's side. If he uses that top deck Blizzard, I think it's easy for kamaretai to look at that and go, you know what, there's a good chance there's another Blizzard. And in this spot, the Conjurer's Calling on the Kaligos, I mean, lnguagehackr did about 40 mana worth of stuff that turn, it felt like. So Kaligos, that's normally a 10 mana card. Sea Giant and Emrys, 2 8/8s, that's probably worth about 7 mana if you want to look at it from a top-down perspective. And then he also got to Blizzard.
What to do?
And then he also got to draw 2 cards.
That's a big turn.
That was literally like a 30 mana turn,
Yeah.
effectively, that lnguagehackr just had.
And it's going to be a big... Oh, Spark Drill.
So Spark Drill can take out some minions here. But I'm seeing a second Blizzard. I'm seeing Ray of Frost, Frostbolt, Zilliax. I don't know if kamaretai gets into this game clean enough. However, the Luna and the Sparks do offer some interesting potential in terms of card draw. And just continuing to fight for board honestly. And Conjurer's Calling adds a lot more to board.
Yep.
What? Whoa. Are you kidding? That is massive. How does he do it? Oh, but a Frost Nova drawn. That's a major draw for lnguagehackr. 2 freezes in a row, I think, gives him a chance to make a counter push here.
The problem is he's staring at 2 damaged Stegatrons. He's got to get through these Stegatrons before he can start pushing damage of his own.
He's got Snap Freeze on 1.
He's got Snap Freeze on 1.
He's got another Conjurer's Calling. And he's got card draw in hand. So if you look at the deck from lnguagehackr and the most important draws right now, I'm thinking exactly Archimage Antonidas, and I'm thinking exactly Alexstrasza are probably 2 of the most important tools. Contain the board, find Alexstrasza, then find your aggressive push.
Yeah.
Oh,
2 Deathwings. Okay.
Those contest damage Stegatrons pretty darn well, TJ.
All right. He has used both Doomsayers. I don't think Doomsayer would be too worth it, just because he gave up his own board too, and starting from scratch, I don't know if he's willing to do because his hand doesn't have too many beefy minions left.
You're talking exactly about Conjurer's Calling craziness.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, no, more so the ability to like Frost Nova Doomsayer.
Oh yeah, that was gone early on.
Yeah, both Doomsayers gone. And he did, I believe, discard a Frost Nova on the turn that his hand was full.
Correct, yes.
So this is his last copy of Frost Nova, and that's both copies of Blizzard's gone. So his board-wide freeze is limited to the Frost Nova in hand.
Mind you, there is the only random spell generation in the deck is exactly Kaligos for lnguagehackr.
Yep.
That's it. And so there's no Mana Cyclones, there's no magic tricks. This is the honest cards he's working with at this point.
Yeah.
And for kamaretai, he started to draw that early mid package, and this was not the timing for it. He needs something big, and with board full, that Mana Cyclone's gone, and Alex gets picked up, and I think this is the opening for lnguagehackr. You freeze the board, you kill the Stegatrons. Next turn, you Alex, and the Deathwings are lethal. He might be able to set that up even cleaner to avoid his Deathwings being at risk.
Frost Nova, Snap Freeze.
Yeah, he could push damage if he wanted to as well.
Yeah, he could push 12.
I imagine he's pretty interested in taking care of Luna to prevent shenaniganry.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, and it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen here.
And add to pressure, why not?
Yep.
Time runs out on me.
Unity.
Prevent a crazy turn of like a 1-mana spell with like a something in a Mana Cyclone fetching 2 fireballs and killing you. Like, you go deep into finding all the outcomes that can cause you to lose. For kamaretai, it is literally about good fortune at this point. I don't even know how he gets the good fortune, but it has to be
for himself.
It has to be Mana Cyclone-ness right now.
Frostbolt can buy time from his perspective because he can freeze one of the Deathwings. But then he still can't take enough damage off the board.
I mean, Mana Cyclone's it. He gets
Yeah.
2 cards. And kamaretai, he is trying his best to see what the optimization is.
Needs Frost Nova.
Ray of Frost, Frost Nova,
Frost Nova.
Counterspell. These all work.
Frost Nova was pretty much exactly the card he needed in the spot.
I think Kona Cold could have worked.
Kona Cold could have worked. In which case, I would have liked actually Frostbolting for Kona Cold out.
Ray of Frost would have worked as well. You know, him taking a few more points of chip damage, that's not the scariest thing. I think it's in totality. You just got to have a freeze.
Yeah.
And Ray of Frost for LnguageHackr now, he gets to freeze back.
So the question is, what does he do with the extra mana? He could freeze like every minute on the board with Frostbolt plus Ray of Frost.
He's got 4 freezes across the board.
Or he could go Astromancer and then freeze 3 things, like the 3 highest attack things.
For LnguageHackr, the random outcomes for kamaretai are severely limited at this point.
It's 1 card. He knows that 3 cards in the hand are sparks. So there's 2 cards from kamaretai's deck, 1 randomly generated mage spell, and 3 sparks.
He's eyeing the Astromancer. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
Stuff is good.
My calculations are flawless.
Oh,
Sergeant Commander.
Oh, yeah. That's a one-way ticket.
A 1-way ticket into the Temple Enforcer.
That sounds like a weird action flick. One-way ticket to Temple Enforcer. Rated R.
I would never pay money to see that.
Cool. You gosh darn better believe I'd pay money to see that. Especially if it was starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Woo! 9 damage for kamaretai. If he absolutely got picture-perfect outcomes on Magic Dart Frog, you're looking at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage. He cannot close the game this turn.
Can he take enough stuff off the board? Can he freeze enough stuff?
Frostbolt can hit Deathwing. You're looking at clearing out Ziliax and the 4 on Deathwing pretty easy. Then you have 9, 10, 11 left to deal with. He can stay alive this turn. But my question is, how does he set up the ability to counterswing? Because you got to win from this point. This game is snowballing.
What to do?
I think that the play for kamaretai might legitimately be playing towards a power of creation outcome.
Time runs out on me.
That did not feel like 70 seconds to me, TJ.
No.
12-12 Deathwing. Likely to be attacked by a water elemental this turn. I wonder if there's a chance if kamaretai
Can bluff?
well, that's what I mean. Could he have isolated the Deathwing with this secret in play? That's an interesting thought. if there's some way for kamaretai to actually isolate the 12-12 Deathwing, I think lnguagehackr might have to respect that as a vaporize. Think about that. Your opponent just spent their whole turn clearing off your board, and they just left up your 12-12, and they're like, yeah, why would I freeze it with my water elemental?
So I think there actually was a way. No, because there's 7 health on board, and he could have had the potential for 6 extra damage if he didn't play the water elemental and played both sparks. Both sparks go into the. Oh yeah, both sparks go into the Argent Commander.
The 4-2.
Yep, and then the ping on the Novice Engineer, and a Frostbolt because he would have 4 extra mana.
It's a weird situation, but the thing about it is because it's counterspell, it means that lnguagehackr can check
Time runs out on me.
the secret first. I think if it wasn't counterspell, that there's a potential that kamaretai could have represented as a bluff, and I think the fact that it was counterspell actually took away that bluff potential because lnguagehackr is going to check for it.
Yeah.
So that would be the reason why you can't make that play. That's weird. That is a very rare Hearthstone circumstance.
Yeah. Magic Trick needs to find a miracle here.
No.
He was hoping for Frost Nova, but looks like Concede comes out from kamaretai.
That's game 1 of lnguagehackr, who, I'll tell you what, I saw him take a pretty deep breath after that one. It was not a very animated deep breath, but you could tell that that was a tense and tough game to navigate on both sides.
Yeah. And honestly, it just feels like lnguagehackr's deck has the advantage overall. kamaretai has been in situations against these greedy mage decks where he just doesn't have the gas in the late game. He gets ahead, Magic Dart Frog allows him to stay ahead, and then just can't capitalize. Even with Damage Tigatron, not only from the Power of Creation, but also Damage Tigatron outcome from the Conjurer's Calling on a 6-drop. And even through that, lnguagehackr had the ability, because of just the more greedy, expensive minions that he had in his deck, to fight it out.
There's 2 things I look at in that match that really stand out to me, which is number 1, how on earth does kamaretai run into 2 greedy mage decks in one tournament when he's built an anti-aggro mage deck?
I don't know.
That's very strange. And honestly, that's the beauty of tournament fields that have so many rounds in play, is you build strategies targeted at what everyone else is bringing, and when they start to succeed, you get to these later rounds and people's decks are just completely unprepared for them. It rewards that deck building aspect. But number 2, I'm learning that Power of Creation actually, in my opinion, might be an anti-aggro tech, where you spend all your resources and you just need a lot of stuff at the end. You're scrapping for everything, and it offers you defensive potential about 30% of the time.
Yeah.
And the defense is massive. Like it's almost insurmountable at times.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and we did get word that kamaretai is switching to his secondary deck. So he's removed Frostbolt, Water Elemental, and a Power of Creation to make room for Frost Nova, 2 Blizzards, and 2 Sea Giants.
Yeah, and I think this is a wise play. You know, the Water Elementals and Frostbolts are going to be very weak to Doomsayer turns, and if you look at the way the Mage matchups often operate, you want freezes.
Yeah.
Freezes are good. I remember saying this in one of the weeks of Grandmasters, and then all of a sudden RDU showed up with a Blizzard in his secondary deck, and I was like, I'm telling you, it happened to me on ladder. I keep seeing it happen for Mana Cyclone. Eventually, they're just going to put him in.
It's a good card. Helps get around those stalemates a little bit more, which is kind of the cool thing. And lnguagehackr has switched to his tertiary list, which, as you saw on screen, has added double Mind Control tech and double Polymorph.
Blow up big stuff.
Yeah, he has taken out a little of his own big stuff. He took out, like, Archmage Antonidas. I'm trying to think what else. I couldn't get a good glimpse of it, but a little bit of the top end. He still has Mountain Giant, still has Calico, still has Alexstrasza, still has double Astromancer.
Acolyte of Pain's gone.
Acolyte of Pain's gone. There you go.
You know, a good way to do this, TJ, would be to click over Decklist 1.
Yeah, but the mouse is over by you. Oh, it took out Geppetto Joybuzz?
Correct.
So
card draw, not a priority, and instead looking at utility overall.
Yeah, and these are some big cards, and I think advantage even more to lnguagehackr now that we've made these switches. kamaretai, while having the freezes and Sea Giants, is great. lnguagehackr has the ability not to just freeze the board and try and stall at the game state. He has the chance to swing the game state by Mind Control teching a big minion or by polymorphing that early giant. Now, kamaretai does have access still to Sorcerer's Apprentice Mana Cyclone, and because lnguagehackr cut some card draw from the deck, there is the ability that kamaretai could find situations where he does out-resource lnguagehackr. And if he has the read that lnguagehackr is switching to his tertiary deck, then he does have ways to play around Polymorph and Mind Control Tech by making sure he doesn't play a big threat unless he's Conjuring calling it the same turn, and making sure that if he does have to go really wide on board, that he reduces the value that Mind Control Tech could have.
Thinking of a card from Kamaretai's deck that could put a big hurt here. Just didn't find it this turn. I was thinking exactly Banana Buffoon. Banana Buffoon would have loaded up a 5/4 Sorcerer's Apprentice to start pushing. And lnguagehackr's deck, I think, is quite weak to that exact style of play. It does have Doomsayers, though, so that always is something you have to think about. But I think that the way that lnguagehackr is going to fall is to a minion that's tall, but not too tall. If it's too tall, easy target. If it's not too tall, it's a tough target.
He does have fireballs. We saw him bridge scap last game. Kamaretai was able to put a couple bananas on a Sorcerer's Apprentice, ended up being 5/4. That's how he got a lot of his early pressure. And Fireball was able to take that out quite easily because lnguagehackr knew, I can expend this Fireball because my win condition in the late game is just sticking bigger stuff than Kamaretai and hitting him with it.
This mage deck has done that we've seen. You know, Dog's got a variation, lnguagehackr has a variation. It's doing a pretty strong job at having the tools to neutralize your opponent's attacks. And I think when you can neutralize a wide range of attacks cleanly and present pressure pretty well off the back end, that's the makings of an absolute tier 1 deck.
Yeah.
We saw the standings before this round. Dog was sitting at 8-0 with a greedy freeze mage list. And lnguagehackr here at 6-2. I mean, there was just not too many of these brought to the tournament.
Yeah. Those freeze mages, man, they're getting people.
Remember that time that I told that story about you saying freeze mage?
Ah, that was a good time.
That was classic. I long for those days.
Classic Teach Merble. lnguagehackr, though, picks up the Frostbolt. Nice timing on the Frostbolt to be able to take out that Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Something big to look at here is that it looks like an easy turn for Kamaretai to just slam a Mountain Giant. But taking into account the list from lnguagehackr, Kamaretai knows that lnguagehackr is super likely to swap over to a double polymorph deck.
Yes.
You don't have to announce which deck you're playing to your opponent when you go into games 2 and 3. You have a secondary and a tertiary deck, which can be up to 5 cards different from a deck that you have to play in game number 1. And so often you can make inferences about those. And so for Kamaretai, it's about waiting to land Mountain Giant with Conjurer's Calling here.
Yeah, and doesn't play anything because he wants the Mountain Giant to be 3 so he can coin out Conjurer's Calling. But now he's staring at a Mountain Giant on the other side. So if Kamaretai coins out Conjurer's Calling here, gets a Grave Horror, that's a perfect opportunity for lnguagehackr to value trade and then play double Conjurer's Calling himself.
Yes, and that's the disadvantage that this play from Kamaretai had, was that exact thing. I actually looked last turn. He would have gone into 5 mana with coin, so he didn't have an elemental evocation set up with it.
Yeah.
But I'm actually curious on this turn alone if just the evocation's better to preserve coin, or on the back end of that, maybe he should just be risking the Mountain Giant. Because now things are looking like they're getting way out of hand. For lnguagehackr, he's very likely to simply freeze this minion a lot of times and go forward from there, but he doesn't have a freeze. So for me,
well, he has a Frost Nova.
He does have a Frost Nova,
That's
but that's
a big expenditure for one Mountain Giant.
Probably not doing that. You know, the good supplement would be to hero power the Mountain Giant. It means Kamaretai has to have Banana Buffoon if he's going to value trade and Conjurer's Calling.
And he doesn't have the mana to be able to Banana Buffoon, play a Banana, and Conjurer's Calling. So I actually like the ping on the Mountain Giant here. I think that's kind of a nice middle ground.
It's a very common iteration I've seen players do to play around this. Oh, yeah. Kamaretai covers his whole face with his hands.
What to do?
He's got to be sweating this round. It's so important.
Yeah. Now, the one thing about lnguagehackr, if he does ping and Kamaretai just plays Conjurer's Calling and gets 2 Mountain Giants, then what kind of situation is lnguagehackr in?
Yeah, you're probably looking at freezing then.
Yeah, you're probably looking at freezing then and hoping Kamaretai goes wider to play a Mind Control Tech, but I do like the ping.
He is so close to being able to do all of this. You know, if he had used the Elemental Invocation instead of the coin, he would have the Banana Buffoon turn. He'd be able to Banana Buffoon, Banana this up, value trade, coin, Conjurer's Calling.
Right. He had no other elementals in hand yet to be able to use Elemental Evocation on something else.
I think actual mana is definitely better than elemental mana.
Yeah, and I think, especially if you have no elementals in hand, then actual mana is way better than elemental mana.
He had drawn the Banana Buffoon that turn as well, right?
Yeah. That's kind of weird.
What to do?
Coin is a big deal.
I think that's actually just a mistake. It's a very, very subtle one, and his reasoning, of course, is almost exactly Mana Cyclone, and its demonstrated importance in the match.
Time runs out on me.
Now this is a tough turn too. kamaretai can go for something a little bit cheeky here and go for like Sorcerer's Apprentice, Banana Buffoon, buff the Mountain Giant twice, and trade over. There's no good ping targets, but that's exceptionally weak to Blizzard.
Oh boy. Well, Frost Nova expenditure to try and set up this Banana Buffoon trade turn. But I think this is advantage Language Hacker at this point. I'm looking at Astromancer, and your opponent just used a Frost Nova.
Yeah.
I'm also just looking at Conjurer's Calling and freeze back.
Sure.
kamaretai used the first freeze. You're free to start spending yours back now.
Yeah.
And a pretty ideal outcome with the Mountain Giants. And so now kamaretai probably has to look at a Banana Buffoon setup. This game's getting weird. And when you have all these giant minions slamming on board, Mind Control Tech looks like a brilliant choice all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I'm worried.
That's why I said Language Hacker's tertiary deck, I think, gives him an even bigger advantage than he had in Game 1. Especially when you compare it to the choice that kamaretai decided to put in, which was the Sea Giants and the additional freeze. I think that Language Hacker's deck is still packs a bigger punch.
You gosh darn better believe it.
Amen, brother.
What to do? What to do?
I just don't know sometimes. It's got something cooking up here.
Time runs out on me.
Oh, boy.
Finds Conjurer's Calling, but this plays right into Mind Control Tech.
Yeah, but I think this turn you're okay to freeze. Like, you're hoping that you don't get frozen back and you go into the Khadgar turn. If you get enough stuff on board, Mind Control Tech is a swing, but you'll still have enough stuff to play to take advantage of it. The issue I'm worried about still is that this is freeze expenditure for setup. Language Hacker is using his freeze expenditure as answer.
Still 2 freezes in hand for Language Hacker as well with Blizzard and Frost Nova, so it's becoming a problem for kamaretai. When you use these Frost Novas, especially in a mirror matchup, you want to use it on a turn where you're developing more than your opponent. Language Hacker's been able to do that. kamaretai is kind of just using it to make sure that this board that he does have is not getting completely decimated.
Going in.
Going in.
We must band together, united for Dalaran.
And honestly, Language Hacker, I don't think is even too upset about seeing this.
I imagine he's kind of upset about seeing it. But this is not the worst turn that Language Hacker could have run into.
Yeah, I mean, even just look at Language Hacker's next turn. He can value trade over this Grave Horror.
Language Hacker's looking nervous, though.
Push a lot. Frost Nova and Mind Control Tech.
He's definitely thinking of some more outcomes that could go really bad.
What to do? What to do?
Because that Khadgar has a target on its forehead. If you're able to clear a lot of this out and create a big backswing, you're looking at power creation still being powerful. You know there's a second half of Conjurer's Calling in hand. He's still got work. There's a lot of work to do in this game. And kamaretai just says, you know what? One more minion. Thank you.
He was looking for Grave Horrors. He was trying to protect his life total.
I'm not sure about that. I think he's just trying to get stuff. I really do.
If one more minion plays further into Mind Control Tech, and at this point, what do you expect from Language Hacker?
Wait a minute.
You expect a trade. What?
I was looking at, could Language Hacker set up a 2-turn lethal here with Frost Nova?
Absolutely.
And just kill.
Mind Control Tech, Frost Nova. Trade in Novice Engineer and ping the Khadgar if you don't steal it.
I was trying to see if you could absolutely lock kamaretai out by keeping his board full.
Ah.
But there's not a. He doesn't have a. If he had a Conjurer's Calling, I think
Yeah.
you have some liberty of like conjuring the opposing Khadgar to keep the board full and freezing it.
Yeah. There actually was a Was there lethal potential there? If he steals the Grave 4, he has 16, 17. Yeah, that was a lethal if he stole the Grave 4.
With the Fireball.
With the Fireball. I was thinking you want to kill the Khadgar first, because you could have traded over the Grave 4, then killed the Khadgar with Novice Engineer Ping to guarantee he steals a Giant. But this play gave him like the 1 in 7 to win the game on the spot.
What? Oh, it's in case there's a freeze from kamaretai.
Whoa.
Language hacker. This is a brilliant play. The only way he can lose is if kamaretai has a board freeze and gets a counterattack.
Yeah, because Language Hacker has no more freezes left. So if he's presented with a counter threat, with a counterattack, with a freeze, then he loses the game unless he draws a freeze off the top.
Oh my gosh.
This is smart.
I don't think that I've ever doomsayered away 36 of my own attack or whatever this is. That is totally counterintuitive.
34, but I see your point.
I said or whatever it is, give or take.
One's out on me.
That
no,
is,
it's 35, I think.
that's impressive.
What, the ping was 36? Nicely done.
Genius play.
Forces a dead turn from kamaretai. Language
That is
Hacker
so
gets
smart.
to land a Calicos on this board.
Yeah, of course, the play ends up looking a lot less smart. You just rip Blizzard on the next turn.
I mean,
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Fireball.
all right, ship it.
You rip a Fireball now, I believe, as well. The reason being is so that way if kamaretai generates a random counter spell, you have the chance to rip a spell into that counter spell and then end the game.
Yeah,
And I think kamaretai here, I think he's done.
he's done so.
Yep, that's not good enough to win. There's not an outcome that saves him here.
I wonder. You win this one.
Language Hacker 2 games to 0 over kamaretai and improving to a 7-2 score through 9 rounds of Swiss. 3 more matches to go in this event as kamaretai picks up his 3rd loss, 2 of them at the hands of a greedy Freeze Mage list.
Yeah, unfortunately for kamaretai, that very likely means that he is out of contention for top 8 with 3 losses. Language Hacker can win out and still make it. His tiebreakers weren't great. He wasn't in the top 16 yet, but if he wins out from this point, there are a lot of players that he's gone up against, either defeated or lost to, that have had good records. kamaretai did have a blazing start to the tournament. We saw him, 5-1 yesterday, I think, on.
I believe he was 5-0 facing Dog.
Yeah, so his tiebreakers have to be pretty good as well. So Language Hacker, if he can win out from here, that's a decent shot at making it into top 8.
Still a lot of dollars up for grabs, though, as you improve in match score in terms of your wins. The breakpoint for payouts is determined by your total match wins.
Yeah.
It's not a tiebreaker placement that pays out money on that spot. So it is technically a fluctuating prize pool with how many wins are slotted out at the 10, 9, 8 mark, etc.
Yeah.
To go from there. So kamaretai still has a number of dollars to play for in this event. Not out of the tournament by any means.
Yeah, and every time I've seen this type of mage deck on stream, the Freeze Mage, I guess we'll call it, Dogs is a little bit more minion heavy without the direct burn of Fireball. But I'm liking it more and more. It just seems like it has game against a lot of things. It seems like it's favored in Mage Mirrors. It seems like it has a better matchup against Warrior. It does succumb to aggro a little bit more because you don't have Sorcerer's Apprentice. You don't have Banana Buffoon. You can't fight early in the game as hard, but you have Frost Nova Doomsayer. You have just Doomsayer, period.
2 Frostbolts.
2 Frostbolts. So your ability to fight for the early boards is there. And Luna's Pocket Galaxy against those control decks is just so good. You just have so much gas in the late game. And I was trying to take a look at some of the other things that he has. It looks like Language Hacker's secondary deck is actually specifically tech towards Holy Wrath Paladin.
Yeah.
Because we talked about how that's one of the poorer matchups for the deck. He's got a Spell Ward Jeweler. in the deck, which makes your hero immune to direct spells, which counters the Holy Wrath.
It's a bootleg ice block.
It's a bootleg ice block, and he has a research project in there as well, which acts as kind of another counter to it, where you can either overdraw in the early game, or when they shuffle things in, force them to draw them and have the second Baleful Banker.
Also just clock on fatigue.
A clock on fatigue, that's right. So kind of an interesting take on the list. So I kind of like Language Hacker's chances overall. Unfortunately for him, his secondary deck's probably not going to be used much. I don't think there's many, if any, Holy Wrath Paladins left in the field.
The whole point of it, though, is if you run into that deck in this large tournament field, you don't just take a loss from it. You have a way to push past it. I mean, I think that's a very important measure for a large field like this, and perhaps not as important measure in something like the Grandmasters program, where they're submitting decks week to week.
Yeah.
It's important because you anticipate an opponent can bring it, but in a large field like this, it's important because there will be someone that brings it, and if they're doing well and you run into them, you cannot afford just a free match loss because the matchup's so bad.
Yeah, that's very true. So like his chances overall, like I said, Language Hacker wins out from here, finishes 10-2. Good chance for top eight at the very least. He's going away with a good chunk of prize money, along with the other 10-2s that didn't quite make that cut for top 8. So loving the play, loving the deck.
Loving the tournament.
Loving the tournament. Loving my chair.
And I'm loving this music because that means the hustle and bustle of round 9 is getting underway and things are getting settled. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to finish up round 9 coverage. And that means 2 more rounds in play before we find our top 8 cuts. Stay tuned. We got plenty more Hearthstone this weekend live from Las Vegas at the Link Hotel.